Let's go to Kenya now, and threats to close two giant refugee camps housing more than 400,000 people, mainly from Somalia and South Sudan. A few days ago, a Kenyan judge stopped the government from closing the camps, but only for the next 30 days. Now, the government in Nairobi has long said that Dadaab and Kakuma are a security threat, and recently gave the UN refugee agency that runs them 2 weeks to come up with a plan to shut them and do something with 400,000 people. Now, at the moment, there is political turmoil in Somalia. There's a dispute between Somalia and Kenya over their maritime border and mineral rights. Could that be what this spat is actually all about? I've been speaking to the Somali analyst and former diplomat, Abukar Arman.
In the last year or so, especially, the tensions were rising. At the worst time, as you're aware, what's going on in the Horn of Africa, you have the Tigray ethnic cleansing by Ethiopia, and then rising tension between Ethiopia and Egypt and Sudan. The last thing you really want is something to happen between Somalia and Kenya. Sadly, it's driven by, in my opinion, by false narrative. Of course, there is some issues between the two countries, namely the maritime dispute that's at the ICJ at the moment. It could be decided at any day. That's one thing. But behind the scene, those things have been negotiated by the two governments. It's an election year for both sides. There's a political reason for that. And then there's nervousness on the international powers that are supporting some of these projects, predatory capitalists that are pushing both sides, whether it is the oil and gas issue or issues of that sort. So you have a combination of those things. And unfortunately, it is creating a tense environment and some kind of a blind nationalism on both sides.
So you're saying that there isn't really a desire on either side to close the camps. I mean, surely it would be extremely bad news for both Somalia and for Kenya were that to happen.
I think realistically that cannot happen, and they understand despite their rhetoric on the Kenya side.
Right, so logistically it can't happen. There's just too many people and there's too much at stake. So why are they making these threats? Who is it who is driving these threats if it's just a kind of a diplomatic dance?
Right. I think they're using it as a political leverage because Kenya is a little bit nervous about what the ICJ might conclude. For example, if the maritime dispute is judged in favor of Somalia, and that would be disastrous for them. So they would rather negotiate outside the court, which the current government of Somalia cannot accept that.
And what we've seen is we've seen arguments over the refugee camps and also threats to close them before, and nothing has come of them. Are you saying that actually this issue is just going to go away? It's just a way of sort of saber rattling and exercising influence on both sides?
I'm afraid so. I think that would happen. The reason is very simple, because in Kenya you have some 4 million ethnically Somali Kenyans that live in there. And now you have also 2 generations that grew up in the, or at least a generation in the refugee camps that are now either citizens or residents of Kenya, and so forth and so on. And also there's the business element. There are a lot of Somalis that invested a lot of money in Kenya. And currently, because of these threats, by the way, some are already voting with their feet, as they say, and moving to places such as Turkey and moving back to Somalia to reinvest. So they're already tasting what could be the disastrous outcome if such move were to materialize. So I'm of the opinion that that will not happen. It's just one of those threats that Kenya had made a number of times in the past, a few years, and this will be just another one.
Trouble between frenemies, he describes it as. Abukar Arman, Somali analyst, formerly the chief envoy to the US.